Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, quick question for you. Did you know that people are up to 22 times more likely to remember a fact when it's wrapped in a story? It's wild, but it's true. Today, we're going to unpack a truly transformative concept. We're breaking down why storytelling is no longer just a soft skill that you can kind of brush aside, but an absolute strategic advantage for leaders who want to communicate and influence effectively. In today's incredibly fast-paced environments, relying solely on data and authority, it just doesn't cut it anymore. If you want to communicate clearly, build unshakable trust, and make decisions with absolute confidence, you really have to master the art of the narrative.
Here's our quick roadmap for today. We'll be covering Beyond Facts, Why Leadership Storytelling Matters, 4 Techniques that Drive Influence, the Narrative Leadership Framework, Storytelling in Action, and finally, Developing Your Narrative Skills. Let's dive right in. Starting off with Section 1, Beyond Facts, Building Belief.
So facts tell you things, right? But stories actually make you believe them. Think about it. You can hand your team a massive spreadsheet full of data, but without emotional intelligence to provide some context, those numbers just aren't going to inspire any real action. A really common mistake leaders make is focusing way too heavily on raw facts, assuming the data will just speak for itself. Spoiler alert, it rarely does. It's the narrative surrounding that data that creates conviction and turns passive listeners into active, engaged participants.
So, what does this actually look like? At its core, storytelling in leadership is turning complicated, abstract ideas into messages that are easy to remember, touch people's hearts, and actually get them to act. It's basically alchemy. By tapping into human emotion and relatability, it bridges the gap between simply understanding a concept on a logical level and feeling deeply motivated to do something about it. You're moving beyond the intellect, straight into the heart of your audience. Moving on to Section 2, Why Leadership Storytelling Matters. Why is this such a crucial tool for leaders? Well, integrating stories establishes trust and alignment far faster than bare data ever could. It enhances your influence, which lets you guide your team's directions so much more smoothly. It also builds authenticity, making you sound like a real, approachable human being, not just a walking corporate memo. Ultimately, this transparency strengthens trust, which we all know is the absolute bedrock of any successful team. Plus, it improves decision-making across the board by really clarifying the why behind the what. Here's a huge takeaway for you. When leaders talk clearly in stories, they don't just give facts, they also shape beliefs. Your ultimate goal as a leader isn't just managing day-to-day tasks. You are managing perspectives. That's the true psychological anchor of influence. When you wrap a vision and a story, you totally bypass that natural skepticism people have toward corporate mandates. You build genuine company culture, and you speak directly to what your team fundamentally values. All right, let's get into the how in Section 3, 4 techniques that drive influence. The first technique is vision-driven storytelling. This is all about linking what we do every single day to our long-term goals to boost morale and commitment. It requires you as a leader to paint a really vivid picture of the future. Think of the famous story of the NASA janitor who, when asked what his job was, said he wasn't cleaning floors. He was helping put a man on the moon. That is vision-driven storytelling at its absolute finest. You're connecting the mundane to the magnificent. The second technique is strategic storytelling. This means ensuring your narratives fit with the aims of the organization to deal with change and handle uncertainty. It's utilized heavily to steer companies through rocky periods. A common mistake here is focusing way too much on the rigid mechanics of a change and completely forgetting about the people actually going through it. A well-placed strategic story acts like a compass. It acknowledges the difficult challenge while keeping everyone totally focused on the shared destination. Then we have authentic human stories. This is sharing real-life events based on openness, thinking, and clarity to foster deep trust. People don't follow perfect leaders, right? They follow relatable ones. Sharing a genuine struggle, a past failure, or a personal realization proves that you're open, reflective, and ultimately an incredibly trustworthy guide. It completely removes that invisible barrier between leadership and the front line. Which brings us to our next part, Section 4, the Narrative Leadership Framework. If you're wondering how to actually build one of these stories, this simple 4-step arc is the absolute engine of effective storytelling. Number 1, context. You set the scene so the audience understands the world you're describing. Number 2, challenge. You introduce the conflict or the hurdle that needs to be overcome. You need that tension. Number 3, choice. You describe the pivot point.
that really difficult decision made in the face of the challenge. And finally, number 4, change. You reveal the outcome, the impact, or the lesson learned. It's brilliant because it safely and effectively guides your audience from a recognizable situation straight through to a highly meaningful resolution. And as a result, this simple structure helps deliver impactful leadership messages that stick. Because let's be honest, you don't want your team forgetting everything 5 minutes after a meeting ends. By packaging your message into context, challenge, choice, and change, you're giving them a reliable mental model. They'll actually carry it with them out of the boardroom and into their daily workflows.
So what does this look like out in the real world? Let's look at Section 5, Storytelling in Action. Storytelling isn't just a tool for a CEO delivering a big keynote speech. It scales to fit absolutely every level. In management, frontline leaders share specific customer stories to reinforce service values or resolve team conflicts. In corporate leadership, executives use narratives to explain massive strategy shifts, providing the deep why behind a new direction. And when you're focusing on inspiring teams, highlighting individual employees' success stories boosts engagement by proving that hard work is actually noticed and highly valued. I absolutely love this quote directly from our source material. Leaders utilize stories to change people's minds by making connections, not by using their power. It hits the nail on the head. True influence is always about connection. Sure, you can force compliance with raw authority. But if you want to inspire genuine, lasting commitment, you need connection for that. Let's wrap things up with Section 6, Developing Your Narrative Skills. Developing this strategic advantage requires a little bit of active work. First, intentionally hunt for good stories by practicing active listening. I guarantee your team and your customers are giving them to you every single day. Second, you have to use emotion with intention to enhance your leadership presence. A major pitfall here is overcomplicating the story with unnecessary details or forced drama. Don't do that. Keep it simple, keep it authentic, and match your emotional tone to the core message. And third, continually refine your delivery through leadership communication training.
Because remember, executive communication coaching helps businesses grow faster by providing real-world feedback and practice. Getting out there, embracing structured learning, and actively seeking out constructive criticism are the absolute fastest ways to refine your delivery. You have to practice in order to perfect the craft. It's as simple as that. Which leads us with this critical, provocative question to consider as you step back into your organization. Are you ready to turn your leadership voice into lasting influence? You now know the frameworks, the techniques, and the psychology behind why this works so incredibly well. So how are you going to use stories today to inspire the action of tomorrow? Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and I really